Hey, this is Mike Robbins. Thanks so much for joining me for this episode of the podcast. I hope you're doing well, you, your family, your team, everyone around you, as we roll through August as I'm recording this. What's today? August 7th, I think. Whenever you may be listening to this or watching this, I hope things are going well. Today, I guess, is my half birthday. So I'm 50 and a half years old today. When I was a kid, half birthdays were like a big thing. And we've kind of made them a thing in our family with our girls, although now that they're 18 and almost 16, not as big of a deal as it was when they were little. But anyway, I've had a really interesting last few days, and I want to talk a little bit about some of my insights because this phrase or this idea or this concept, some of my baseball coaches used to talk about. Sometimes it's better to be lucky than good because I would have baseball games back when I was playing and pitching where I would pitch really well and we would lose 2-1. And then I'd have other games where I didn't pitch that well and we'd win like 7-4. And again, it's like, well, we can't always control the outcome, but we can focus on the effort and the process. But I've been thinking about this because I spent Friday through Monday this past week at the national convention for the National Speakers Association. And I've been involved with the National Speakers Association since I started my business back in 2001. I was really involved for about 10, 12 years when I was starting my business and when I really, kind of things started to take off with my speaking and my writing and everything. And like that organization and the people and the members and the whole structure of it, especially in the first 4 or 5 years as I was getting started, were incredibly valuable for me. Like I didn't know anything about the business of speaking or so many aspects of like what does it mean to actually do this for a living. And it's changed and evolved so much in 24 years, of course. But and people in the National Speakers Association are incredibly generous, supportive, sort of based on this premise of like we're all in this together, really, and like let's help each other out. But I haven't been to one of these national conventions in like 12 years. And I still have been a member and have stayed sort of loosely connected, but haven't been directly involved for a whole bunch of reasons, mostly just life and being busy and having kids and speaking and traveling and all the stuff. But it was such an interesting experience to go back. Some friends that I'm still in touch with on a regular basis, many old friends that I hadn't seen in a long time and hadn't caught up with, and then met a bunch of, new people and it was great. I was inspired and made connections. And so I'm sharing all of this because it's kind of like not quite like going back to, a reunion of high school or college necessarily, but especially having such a big gap. And here I am in year 24 of doing this and then seeing people who I started in the business with. And, without getting into annoying competitive things, like there's people who've had more success than me or less success or whatever the case may be. But it really got me thinking about, the role that luck and good fortune often plays in success, one way or the other. I mean, I guess it could be bad luck and bad fortune at the same time. And the more I've been thinking about it, the more I realize it's a bit of a tricky subject, actually, because we talk a lot and think a lot again about success and performance, whether it's individually, whether it's as a leader, whether it's with a team, with a group, with a company, with whatever. It's about hard work, it's about execution, it's about, utilizing skills and talents and, you know, sort of translating that into execution and performance. And all of those things are absolutely true. And that's a lot of what I study and what I write about and what I speak about. And when I'm hired to come in to work with a team at some level, even though we're talking about kind of the softer side of success, if you will, some of the intangible stuff, it's still ultimately based on this context of we're here, we want to get there. I'm here, I want to get there. What do I need to do? What do we need to do so that we can create that next level of success? But we don't talk a lot about luck. We don't talk a lot about serendipity. We don't talk a lot about magic or good fortune. Because in some ways, I think there's like this weird, first of all, you can't control that, right? But the truth is, if you talk to almost any really successful person or group of people, they will acknowledge at some point, if they're being really honest, even if they've worked incredibly hard, there's been some luck involved. There's been some right place at the right time thing. There's been some privilege involved, which again is another and has become a very charged word and concept that I've talked a bit about and written about over the years. That, for the longest time, I thought privilege meant like, you had a silver spoon in your mouth, or you were, you know, came from like the Rockefeller family or something like that. I didn't realize, oh, we all have privilege. Some of us have more privilege than others. Some of that privilege can be based on our race and our gender and our orientation. It can be based on our physical abilities. It can be based on the family that we come from or where we live in the country or the world. It can be based on all kinds of things. And it's not a bad thing at all. In fact, it's like, it's an honor. It's something to be grateful for, to have some privilege. And then the question is, what do we do with the privileges that we have? You can be simultaneously privileged and hardworking. You can be lucky and successful, right? I think it's a famous quote from Seneca that said, opportunity arises when luck and preparedness meet, or something to that effect. I'm sort of loosely quoting Seneca. Jim Rohn, who I was talking to my friend Theo over the weekend at the NSA meeting, and he was a big fan and student of Jim Rohn, the great, motivational speaker and author. And he talked a lot about the balance between ambition and contentedness, like being able to be simultaneously ambitious and content, which is tricky, right? That often ambitious people have a hard time being content, and content people have a hard time being ambitious, if you think about it at a certain level. But can you operate with both a level of contentedness, be grateful and content with what you have, while you're still ambitious for what you want to create or accomplish or experience? And that's something that I've struggled with for a lot of my life. But as I was reflecting on my life and my career and my work over this past weekend, both in the way of feeling really proud, if I'm being honest, of myself, but also noticing my little ego getting tweaked at times, or envious of other people who've maybe had more success than me, maybe in a shorter amount of time, right? And I think all of us can look at that, or think about that, or think about people that we grew up with, or that we knew, or that we met in our industries, say, years ago. And, again, I mean, there's another great quote. I think it came from Benjamin Franklin, that comparison is the death of joy, right? There is no joy in life. I think he said, maybe I'm misquoting this someone else, joy doesn't exist there, it exists within us. So all of that is true. But I think because luck and good fortune are impossible to control, and they're just by nature unfair, some people just get lucky when other people don't. Again, you might have been born in a family where you were given lots of opportunities, and maybe you were born in a family where you weren't given lots of opportunities. Maybe, you had people to show you the way and mentor you. And again, you happen to sit next to someone at an event, or go to school with someone, or, whatever it is, right place, right time, the stars all aligned. And then there you go. And I think, again, it's hard for us, just like it's hard for us to acknowledge our own privilege. I think it's also hard for us to acknowledge our own good fortune, because we feel guilty about it, or somehow we think it invalidates our hard work or our commitment or something. But again, multiple things can be true at the same time. I feel like when I reflect on my own career, I feel like I've worked quite hard. I feel like I've, for better or worse, like I've earned a lot of what I've been able to create success wise. And there's also been a lot of luck and good fortune along the way. I've met people. I live in a part of the country, or, went to school at a place, or did some things in my past, or know some people, or met, whatever it is. So how can we tap more into luck, magic, serendipity, good fortune? Again, we can't control it, but we can be open to it. We can acknowledge it. We can realize that it is a key factor in our success and the success of our teams and the people around us. There was a great movie that I saw, I think it came out about, I don't know, 10, 11 years ago, called 20 Feet from Stardom. It's a documentary. And the documentary followed a couple of very successful backup singers. So people who backed up, the Rolling Stones, or, Bruce Springsteen, or, on a lot of records and, albums maybe that you listen to, and you wouldn't even know these people by name. You wouldn't know them by face. They're not famous, but they're incredibly talented. And it was interesting because as you're watching the film, and maybe you saw it, or if you didn't, I highly recommend it. There's all these people, again, these very talented backup singers, and you're like, oh my gosh, they're incredible just in terms of pure talent. But in the film, Sting is one of the people they interviewed, Bruce Springsteen, and I think it was Sting who said, this is not just based on pure talent. Because if it was, the most talented people would be the most successful people, and that's not the case. And it's not to take away from the people who end up being really successful in the recording industry. And again, I know very little about that industry. I enjoy music. I'm not a musical person. I've never, you know, put any music out into the world, but I can imagine it's incredibly competitive, and hard to make it, right? Sometimes I'll be sitting in a coffee shop or somewhere else, listen to someone on a guitar play and thinking, oh my gosh, that person is an incredible musician, has an incredible voice. Why aren't they famous? But Sting was basically saying, like, there's some aspect of karma or, fate or something involved. There's some other factor that then allows some people to have an enormous amount of success in this industry and other people with equal, if not more talent, don't. And I think that's true in a lot of industries and a lot of situations, not just in the music industry. So, what can we do? How do we tap more into this luck or serendipity, good fortune, even magic? I think the first thing that we can do is take some inventory of the lucky things that have happened to us, the good fortune that we've had. And even if you've had a very difficult life and a lot of challenge along the way, look, the way our brains are wired, we tend to focus on negative experiences, right? For survival. So those memories get stored in our amygdala, they're stored in our nervous system to protect us so that they don't happen again. So we tend to recall usually much more quickly and much more passionately the bad stuff that's happened. So in not in any way of invalidating any trauma or difficulty or challenge that you've had, but I bet you've had some good luck and good fortune at times in your life. There's always people like, I never win anything. Nothing ever good ever happens to me. I don't know. Usually that's not true completely. And again, objectively, some people might be luckier than others. But I think if we tap into and remember some of the times that we've been lucky or the good fortune that we've had, it can remind us. And then what's more important than the remembering is actually trusting that is possible. Things can change in a heartbeat. Right. I was talking about last week, I think, or maybe 2 weeks ago, a little bit of what's going on politically in the country right now. And not to get too far into it, and especially if you're listening to this weeks or months or years later, it's not going to be irrelevant completely, but you'll be like, oh, that was 100 years ago. But just recently, right? Like Joe Biden was running for president and then he stepped aside. He's the current president, but now he's not running for reelection. And Kamala Harris, his vice president, got the nomination and is now running for president. I don't know if she'll become president. I don't know what's going to happen, but that happened pretty quickly and sort of dramatically. And a lot of people have gotten very excited. And now, just very recently, she picked the governor of Minnesota, Tim Walz, to be her running mate. I didn't even know who this guy was like 2 weeks ago. And I like pay attention to politics quite a bit. This guy's been the governor of Minnesota for a number of years. Like he's in his second term. He was in Congress for, I think, I don't know, 10, 12 years. Never heard of the guy. And I'm just saying that in context, right? Like, this is no disrespect to him. Now he's running to be the vice president. And it really came because he started to do some interviews and he's like, what he was saying was resonating with people. And then he got on the list and the short list and they picked him to be the vice president. And I'm just like, does he deserve it? But yes. I mean, he was a governor and a congressman but like, there's definitely some good fortune. And if you just think of whether you follow politics or not, this is not normally the way this whole thing goes down. There's so much that's unprecedented about this, but like there is some luck and some good fortune. There is some right place, right time, right message, right moment, right. You've gotten jobs. It's not that you don't deserve it, but like there's some other force at play. So if we remember that, if we take inventory of that, we look for it, we can attract more of it, or at least remind ourselves that is possible. I can trust. Now, look, it's not the most effective strategy to have. Like, I'm just going to go out and expect that I'm going to be lucky. Although, look, without getting too metaphysical about it or woo-woo about it, I do think that our expectations actually have a big impact on our experience. When we expect things to go wrong, when we expect things to be hard, when we expect things to not work, they have a tendency to go that way. And when we expect them to go well, not 100% of the time, but they're more likely to go well. right? We all know people who like whine and complain about always getting a raw deal and nothing ever works out for me and it's not fair. And then it's like they're a magnet for bad things. And then we know other people, and sometimes they're kind of annoying that just like expect everything to work out and doors to get open for them and people to show up. And they kind of do. And we're just like, well, aren't you annoying? When really what it is we're envious. I've probably shared this on the show, but Michelle and I love the show Shrinking on Apple TV. We're anticipating somewhat anxiously but excitedly the second season, which I think and hopefully will come out in the next few months. But there's a character in Shrinking that I love. I love all the characters, actually. It's a very small cast. Harrison Ford and Jason Segel um, but there's a character in the show who constantly says everything goes my way, and it bugs everyone and gets on everyone's nerves. But it's actually kind of a funny, interesting mantra. And Michelle and I, since we started watching the show a year or so ago, at first jokingly, but then more seriously, started saying that everything goes my way, everything goes our way, as a way to counteract some of the negativity, some of the fear, some of the doubt, some of the whining and complaining we were noticing that was happening for us based on, in my opinion, like real life things. We weren't just doing it to do it, but like trusting that, remembering that we actually can tap into good fortune. And I've often said for years, pay attention to what you expect of other people of life because you often get what you expect. So that's the first thing. Trusting, remembering, and even expecting that good things can happen, lucky things can happen, fortunate things can happen. The second thing is to really look for opportunities, look for magic, be searching it out, right? Like, what if, again, just thinking about playing a little game with your spouse, or it could be a coworker, teammate. It's like, okay, every day we're going to check in at the end of the day and we're going to talk about something lucky that happened, something magical that I know it sounds kind of cheesy and corny, but like if you were on the lookout for it, it's like gratitude, right? They've scientifically proven like keeping a gratitude journal, something I've done for many years. When we write down things we're grateful for every day, it not only makes us feel better, but now we become like a magnet. We're looking for things to be grateful for so we can write them down, so we can share them. Now we become kind of, again, like a magnet for it. Doesn't magically mean that we can control life and reality and all of a sudden, but like looking for those opportunities, looking for those good fortunes, looking for the magic, the serendipity, the luck, if you will. I took a workshop years ago that was about, changing our mindset around money and finance and abundance. And they would say, when you find money on the ground, or, a dollar, a quarter, you know, that to pick it up, be grateful for it, and say the mantra that they encourage that we'd say is, I am a money magnet. And it seemed, again, kind of corny and cheesy in the context of this workshop, but like to this day, I still find myself doing that. I'm at the grocery store and there's a quarter on the floor. I will pick it up, look up to the sky and say, I'm a money magnet, and stick it in my pocket just as a reminder of like, hey, money can just fall out of the sky. It's possible, right? I'm sure you've had this happen in your life where some money just shows up and right. You put your hand in your pocket and there's a $20 bill you forgot you put in there months ago, years ago. A check comes in the mail that you weren't expecting. Does it happen all the time? No. Is that a effective financial strategy for how to plan your finances? Probably not. But like it happens. Sometimes it could be right place, right time. There it goes, right? Preparedness, meeting opportunity, good fortune, luck. So that's the third thing is be prepared, be ready. So here's the paradox. Again, both things can be true at the same time. We can work hard and we can expect magical, good fortune, right? Lucky things to show up. Is it going to happen all the time? Is it going to happen consistently? Might we go through a run where there's a lot of really wonderful things that we could put in the category of good fortune, and then maybe a stretch where not so much? Absolutely. So keep preparing ourselves, keep doing the work, being ready. In my business, I think about people that I admire, but sometimes find myself envious of. It's like, years ago when Brene Brown's vulnerability TED Talk went viral, I got it emailed to me literally like 50 times in the span of, I don't know, like 3 or 4 weeks, I remember. I think she did that talk in 2010, right? I had written a book on authenticity the year before. Now, again, different, and, Brené's an amazing author and researcher and professor, and, different career, different path, different track, the whole bit. But, at the time, she had written a book, maybe even a second book, and, was teaching at the university and was speaking out in the world, kind of like me, but relatively unknown like me. And then all of a sudden, she does this TED talk at TEDx Houston, and then everyone's, oh my gosh, and the talk goes around and around and around, and it becomes a thing, a phenomenon, which I was grateful for, and I still am grateful for. I love her work. I love that TED talk. It's one of my favorites. But to me, at some level, I look at that. That was good fortune. She gave a good talk, but she can't control it going viral. It goes viral. But I've often used her as an example when I talk to other friends of mine, speakers and authors and thought leaders. And it's like, yeah, there was some good fortune involved in that for her. Now, I don't know her personally, even though I admire her and her work, but she also was prepared. She had the goods, like her work. She'd been doing her work for a while, both her personal work and her research. When she got invited to go sit with Oprah, when she got invited on the stage at the actual TED conference a few years later, when she got all of a sudden, not all of a sudden, but it was like, oh no, this was not a one hit wonder. Like, this woman is incredible. This work has a lot of depth and passion and power and impact to it. So when I see her success from afar, not knowing her exactly and how it's all set up, I can go, wow, there was a good fortune, like a lightning strike moment, but she was ready and prepared when that lightning strike moment happened. There's all the sayings like it took me 10 years or 20 years to become an overnight sensation, but sometimes that happens, right? Tim Walz gets tapped on the short list for VP and starts doing all this national media. And then people start going, this guy's cool. This guy's interesting. And then lo and behold, a month ago, we thought someone else was running for president. Now Kamala Harris is running for president and she picks him. And like, if you'd asked Tim Walz back in June, do you think you're going to be on the ticket running for vice president? He would have said, no, there's no scenario in which that could happen. Yet here he is. And again, the vast majority of humans on the planet are not going to be running for vice president of the United States of America, even as the governor of a big state. But I say all of that because those things can happen. So can we be prepared? Can we be ready? Can we do the work, like the real work, the inner work, the practical work? So when the time comes, when you do get tapped for that promotion, you're ready to step into that, even if you feel nervous. Let's just say you get the good fortune, right? Someone really advocates for you. Someone is willing to mentor you. Someone leaves and an opportunity opens up. And again, you're in the right place at the right time. There you go. And then the fourth thing that's super important for us to do, and this goes back to the whole Jim Rohn, be content. You can be content and ambitious at the same time, is be grateful. Be grateful. Gratitude is such a powerful generating energy. It attracts more good things to us. It allows us to be content with what we have while we're still open to and interested in what comes next and where we're headed. And look, I've been writing about and speaking about gratitude for years. It's super important and it can be challenging, especially when things are tough, when we're not where we want to be exactly. Right? I was watching myself at the NSA convention, grateful to be there, proud of myself, reflecting back on the 24 years of being in this business and all the ways that I'm super grateful for my life and my work today. And at the same time, looking around and catching myself comparing or thinking, I could be here, I could be there, that would be fun. I have some ambition and some excitement and some goals and dreams and aspirations, things that haven't been fulfilled quite yet. Can I hold on to both of those things at the same time? Absolutely. It's challenging, but we can do that. Can we be content and grateful for where we are, the opportunities in front of us, and at the same time aspire to something different, something more? For sure. Look, the sad reality is we often aren't grateful for what we have until it goes away. I've quoted this before on the show, I know, because it's one of my favorite lines from any movie I've ever seen. It's one of my favorite movies, Good Will Hunting, back in the late 90s, right? Robin Williams plays the therapist, Matt Damon plays the young, brilliant, but troubled young man. And at one point, Robin Williams says to Matt Damon, you'll have bad times. Everyone does in life. They'll just wake you up to all the good stuff you weren't paying attention to. And I think that that is so true about life, but it doesn't have to take something tough, something hard, something painful to wake us up to the good stuff. You can choose to be grateful right now. Is everything working out perfectly in your life right now? Probably not. If you're anything like me and just about every other human I've ever met, you might even be going through a really difficult, challenging time right now with some pain or uncertainty or fear or difficulty or grief or unknown of what comes next. You may be going through an incredibly wonderful, abundant, successful time in your life right now. Fantastic. You're probably somewhere in the middle of those two extremes. I would imagine that's kind of where life tends to unfold most of the time for most of us. But we can always choose to be grateful. What are you grateful for right now in this moment as you're watching this or listening to this? Maybe it's the day I've recorded it. Maybe it's a few days later, a few weeks later, a few months later, a few years later. Whatever day it is, whatever's going on in your life right now, you can choose to be grateful. Gratitude opens us up. As someone said to me years ago, gratitude and victimhood can't coexist. It invites in the luck, the good fortune. Does it make it happen? Does it manipulate it so that only good things will happen? No. And gratitude, by the way, doesn't mean everything's great. It means we choose to, as the book behind me says, my very first book, focus on the good stuff, which is a choice. So remember what we've actually, the good fortune that we've had, the luck, and trust that it's possible. Be open to it. That's the first step. The second thing is look for opportunities, look for magic, look for good fortune and luck, and be able to acknowledge it. It doesn't take away from your commitment, your hard work. It doesn't mean somehow you don't deserve it or you have to apologize for it. You can be grateful for good luck and good fortune. And it isn't fair. It's never going to be fair. Third thing is be ready, be prepared. So when the good fortune does show up, you're prepared so you can meet that opportunity. That's how we create luck, if you will. Not control it, not manipulate it, right? And then finally be grateful. Easier said than done, but we can be both grateful and ambitious about whatever our goals and dreams might be at the same time. But both of those things are important, and we don't have to give up one for the other. We can do those things simultaneously. So thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. Again, I'm doing most of the episodes now on YouTube as well. So if you're watching on YouTube, thank you. Make sure you've subscribed to the channel so you don't miss any other podcast videos, but other videos that we post. If you're listening to this on one of the podcast apps or platforms, feel free and make sure to like or subscribe or follow the show. We love it when you leave a rating or a review or share an episode with others. That just helps more people know about the show, and we appreciate that. There's links in the show notes as well as in the show description on YouTube for you to connect with me on social media or learn more about me and my work. Best place to do that is at our website, which is mike-robbins.com. Until next time, keep bringing your whole self to work, to life, and remember, we're all in this thing together.